One of the biggest lies about sleep apnea is that it cannot be cured. And we're told once you have it, you're stuck, whether it's with a CPAP, a mouth guard, or even getting risky surgery. But here's the truth, sleep apnea can be cured. And I know that because I've done it myself. And if you don't believe me, I have the sleep studies to prove it. In this episode, we're going to flip your understanding of sleep apnea upside down so you have a chance of actually fixing it. Plus, I'm going to reveal the metabolic link that helped me get back to 100% normal sleep and energy. And most importantly, I'm going to walk you through the exact steps that I took in my journey so that you can start to see the path forward for yourself of a life free from sleep apnea. And it all started where I started, about 10 years ago. And yes, I'm aware I look like I'm probably 18 right now, and then what would that make me, like 8 years old in this photo? But rest assured, photo of me over there, that's my mid 20s, video of me right here in my mid 30s. Got it? Now, before you discount, oh, he's young and all that, we'll talk about why that's not an issue and actually even a good thing. But nonetheless, long ago, I was waking up every like 60, 90 minutes, gasping for air, and just stuck in this mode of just like sleep was an absolute nightmare to the point that every time I was going off to bed, I would start to have those worries about how bad that night was going to be and how awful that next day was going to be. Because when I was living like this, waking up every single 60 minutes, and I was unaware of how many times I was actually waking up in between all that, and I'll show you in my sleep study here, the days were just an absolute struggle. Like the mornings, the first like 4 hours of the day, didn't feel like my brain was on, and it was just a struggle from there on out. So what that actually looked like, let me make sure I get this all on screen here. So for the sleep study I had, I have the main findings highlighted, 25.7 events per hour. And what that meant was about 26 times per hour, my body stopped breathing for 10 seconds or more. And then I would have to activate my sympathetic nervous system to start breathing again. And pretty much every single time you have one of those events happen, you may not wake up, but your body is waking up to a less restful state of sleep. That's why you can be so tired with sleep apnea and not really get anywhere. And when I got this news, it was pretty devastating because, you don't expect someone who's young to like, oh, here you go, you have sleep apnea. That's something that happens to people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. But it can happen to anyone, like I'll show you, and you'll know why that happens so that you can fix it. And so that's what led me down the road of not only the titration study, trying out a CPAP, doing all of that, but just into so many other avenues that I was exploring that I'll talk about in a moment. All that struggle led to a true eureka moment where maybe it did involve a bathtub. And ultimately that led to 18 months later. Now, when I say 18 months, don't freak out and stop watching. Oh man, this is going to be a long thing. When we're working with people, it takes a lot less time with that because this was a lot of mistakes in these 18 months, and we'll cover that shortly. So 18 months, 25.7 down to 3. So for those of you counting at home, less than 5 is normal and indicative of sleep apnea being miraculously gone. But you had to think, how did that even happen? Because I wasn't overweight in any of those photos, not overweight now or in between or anything like that. So what the heck happened there? Because I didn't get surgery, I didn't use a mouth guard, I didn't do any of that stuff. So how did that go down? Before we get into that, I want to clear up some things here because you may say, oh, he's young, he had different issues. Let's speak some truth to this so you can understand what's actually going on here. Sleep apnea can happen at any age. Yes, it's more common in the 40s and beyond, but still happening in your 20s and 30s. Now, don't get me wrong, there will be some advantages of having a younger physiology. You're able to get away with a little bit more. We'll talk about that in a moment. Or you may be quick to point out, hey, there could have been other issues going on here because maybe it was his adenoids, but I have an issue with my tongue. Or pick any anatomical issue that you want to point out. Maybe it was a small jaw. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. But the fact of the matter is, no matter what your age is, and I'm well aware that most of the people watching this video are somewhere on the right here, or no matter what your anatomical variation is, guess what? Here is the big insight that turned everything upside down for me. Was looking at this, of where we have this thought that there's all these different things, all these different ages, but there's a common treatment, and that's okay, that we're able to settle our minds on that. But thinking that there's a common cause amongst all of these different things, that's the crazy thing. But here's the reality. There is just one root common problem in all of sleep apnea, And it's right here. This is a cross-sectional view of someone's head. Very pleasant thing about it, because someone's head right in half. What you're looking at is from the side, where we see the tongue here, the soft palate, the throat, all of that. This is what happens in all cases of sleep apnea. You have this vacuum of tissues come together and blocks the airway off. And that happens whether you have a problem with your nose, a problem with your jaw, a problem with anything. It all comes back down to this common mechanism. Very important. And that's why my story applies to you as well. So let's fix that of where a common treatment, let's put that in the crazy category. Having a common cause makes things a lot easier to deal with. Now, just because there's a common cause, there's still going to be some complexities. So that's the short version of my transformation, going from having an AHI around 26 down to less than 3 and still being way below that. I haven't checked in years and years and years, but I'm sleeping just fine, except for the nights our puppy just wants to get up and do things at 3 a.m. Can't stop that. Nonetheless, what was the big breakthrough for me? Because again, we get told you need a mouth guard, you need surgery, you need this pleasant looking pillow. And by the way, why is it, you can check this for yourself, I need solved. Wedge pillows, which are for sleep apnea, usually, there's other conditions as well. When you look for them on Amazon or Google, it's only ever women on them. And it's not like a little bit more women, it's only women. So if someone could let me know why that is. I would expect like a 50-50 split, but no, it's 100% women. Mysteries. Now, that tangent aside, this was the pool I was swimming in of surgery, machines, etc. But the first big insight actually came from a yoga class. So if you do yoga or know someone who does, there's this thing you do at the very end known as corpse pose, which is so attractive sounding, right? Or I'm not going to try to say it, savasana. I don't know. I've never been good at pronouncing things. Didn't talk much when I was a kid. Nonetheless, when you do this, it's supposed to calm your body down. It's supposed to be a very calming pose. You just lay there and you breathe very slowly. And at the end of one class, when I was walking back to my apartment, I realized and recognized that I was still breathing pretty slowly 10, 20, 30 minutes later. So I asked myself why. And how it comes down is that there is this connection between how you breathe and your body's nervous system. So if you breathe slowly, then there's a signal to your brain through your nervous system to calm down. It slows down your heart rate, and it also slows down your respiratory rate, how fast you're breathing. So you'll breathe more slowly. So in other words, there's this connection between your brain and your breathing, brain-breath connection. And then the next question became, well, how could this help me? Because I have sleep apnea. I've been told it's an anatomy issue. I just got to shove more air down there or jam my jaw a certain way. The truth is, sleep apnea is a breathing problem. So why the heck aren't we focusing on breathing? And if you've ever watched Zoolander, this is how I felt at this time, because I was getting told again, oh, surgery, oh, maybe, get a mouthpiece. Those don't really impact my breathing. Nothing is actually changing this brain-breath connection. Because if I can breathe differently from doing exercises, well, could that change what happens at night? So that's what inspired me to start looking more into the books. Here's not me, but a representation of me being a complete nerd in the library, just lifting books as an exercise, not actually reading them. But seriously, one of the first things I stumbled upon was this old paper. And here it is. You can look it up yourself. 1953. So what they found in here, and this is one of the first studies on sleep apnea, around the 50s of where there started to be research on it. And what they found in this study is that hyperventilation at night leads to episodes of apnea. They could really just induce sleep apnea by increasing the breathing rate of people trying to sleep. And that's what got me thinking of where there's this fast breathing pattern, but now I have a way to slow it down. Okay, well, how can I use that? And before we talk about exactly how I did that, just want to give you an update to this line of research. It's not really new. I mean, this is about 2 years old. Is that this same theory that airway inspiration triggers collapse of the airway. This is what I mean by there's one common root cause. Yes, there's the common spot where things collapse in, but what is that collapse triggered by? A faster, irregular inhale. That's what causes it. Now, I'm not discounting all these anatomical issues, but I'm saying they all funnel down to the same thing. It's very important because you can have a narrow nasal passageway. You can have enlarged adenoids. You can have a big tongue. You can have a small jaw. Even being overweight it all leads to the same common problem, which is a more narrow airway, which is then like breathing through a straw. If you have to breathe through a straw, guess what? You have to breathe faster to get the same amount of air. And then as a result, you now change this brain breath connection into a bad way. That is, you're now wiring yourself to breathe faster because you cannot consciously control your breathing at night. You can't. But if you modulate your nervous system, that can change how you breathe at night. Very important point. So, what that looks like a little bit more in depth. Once again, fast breathing is the trigger of sleep apnea. Fast inhale, then you pull things like your tongue into the airway, and then your airway is blocked. It's that simple. And to make it even simpler, here's a nice animation for you. Narrow airway requires faster breathing. Okay, faster inhale pulls that tongue to the back, and then it's blocked off. That's not what we want at all. Cannot get air through as shown here. However, if you do slow breathing, like I'll show you, guess what? That stays open. You're not pulling your tongue and your soft palate back into that space. So once again, slow inhale, tongue stays out of the airway stays open. That simple. So to recap, you do special breathing techniques, trick spotting the breathing slower for hours afterwards, resets your brain breath connection, and then you keep that slow, steady breathing to keep your airways open at night. Now, what the heck do you actually do? Now, this is what I did. I'm going to tell you what I did. Now, this will work for some people. This may not work for everyone. Obviously, everyone is an individual. And I'm a little extra. I will admit I'm pretty extra. This was the Google image I could find of someone being too intense. And I think this represents things nicely. I don't smoke or drink, but I do have cats. So what I did, if you want to write this down, but also this will be written down for you. So what I did was this routine. I'll walk you through both parts of it. So the first 5 minutes was a maximum breath in through your nose, all through my nose as best I could. Maximum breath in, then another breath on top. So think of it as inhale big, inhale again. And then to breathe out as slowly as possible through the nose. As slowly as, like literally as slow as you can. And then go through that cycle. So 1, step 2, step 3. Did that for 5 minutes. Now, the reason I did this is mainly because that was very similar to what was going on in yoga class of special breathing technique. Now, when I learned more about breathing and what reprogrammed it, we'll talk about this metabolic switch in a moment. Now, I'm not saying yoga breathing is the end-all be-all. There's a lot of other factors, especially these metabolic things we're going to talk about around carbon dioxide, which is what led to the second part of this routine, which is to breathe out as slowly as possible and then do half a max inhale, or feel like you breathe to half your normal capacity. This is very difficult. This is why I gave you that little warning up here. A lot of things in my journey, I went too difficult too soon. Wish I had a way to scale, or I knew better, or just wasn't so, relatively extreme. So it is a breathe out as slow as you can through your nose, and then you only inhale to half your capacity before breathing out as slowly as possible again. This will be difficult. If it's too difficult, you can just modulate the inhale, where you can do 3/4 inhale or just a full inhale. Ain't no shame in that. Just nice and slow is the goal, because we want to rewire your brain breath connection so that it's set up and then carries over into the nighttime. So when I first did this, literally the first night, because I wrote this out, I was like, this is so dumb. I was like, this is the stupidest idea I've had yet. But hey, I'm pretty desperate here. That night, I literally thought someone drugged me, because I woke up to nice glowing sunlight from the window, which is not something I've experienced before. I only ever saw the red light from my alarm clock every hour, basically on the hour throughout the night. But I woke up in this stereotypical, oh my God, it was crazy. I could not believe it. And continuing to do that, that's what allowed me to get off a lot of the crutches, CPAP, also ditched the mouth guard at that time, and then, mouth tape, all that stuff. But even though I was sleeping better, still having a struggle during the day. Whether it was the mornings, I had to rely on a lot of coffee, or the afternoon, just have a big crash. So there was something more I had to improve, because if you're tired during the day, your sleep is still not as restorative as it needs to be. So that's what led me to the big missing metabolic link. So what's the missing link? It's a good question. And we're about to dive into some science here. I'm sorry, gonna do it to you, but we'll start off, it'll be easy. All right. So when you breathe, the whole idea is oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. There. Step one, understanding that. You got it. Great. Step two is understanding that the amount of these gases, especially CO2, will signal to your brain how much you should be breathing. Pretty simple. Now, the big point is again, CO2 levels influence your breathing. Now, if you have sleep apnea, this is where the whole thing shifts. If you have sleep apnea, you're stuck in a faster breathing pattern. Breathing through a straw, remember? And it's not noticeably faster. You would have to measure it in a lab, etc. So, faster breathing will lead to lower CO2 levels. What does that cause? If we zoom in on this, if you're hyperventilating, just like I said in that original 1953 study, you're hyperventilating. We look at this blue line, which is CO2. CO2 goes down. Let's pull that all together. If you have sleep apnea, you're stuck in a fast breathing pattern, your CO2 levels are going to be lower. And then that's going to mess up the signal between your brain and the rest of your body for breathing. So in summary, sleep apnea, faster breathing, lower CO2 levels, it's going to mess up the brain-breath connection. Even simpler, low CO2 levels, too low, bad. All right. Now the opposite is what we want. We want higher CO2 levels for slower breathing, and then you can help fix sleep apnea. Now, the special breathing techniques, this is how they fundamentally work. They raise CO2 up a little bit, and that slows down your breathing and then helps reprogram. Not only at a neurological level like muscle memory, but also biochemically from raising that amount of CO2. So, when I learned this, I thought, well, what else can I do to increase CO2 levels? And I was diving into the science of all these different things, right? All the CO2 in the environment, and whether it's, cows, factories, plants. And what I learned was the key to sleep apnea was actually fewer cows. Because, okay, this is a joke, just making sure like people are still there. Also, I just like to entertain myself in the middle of these, make sure that I'm not going insane. But honestly, the second key to sleep apnea is the mitochondria. You may know this as the powerhouse of the cell. I hope I've activated a memory from high school biology. And your mitochondria, they actually produce CO2 because your mitochondria, they're metabolic engines. When they're not working very well, they're not burning fuel. They're not producing energy. An engine that doesn't burn a lot of fuel also makes less exhaust. Think of it like that way. So if you have bad mitochondria, you have lower CO2. And then that will favor sleep apnea. Remember, low CO2, sleep apnea. Low CO2, sleep apnea. Low CO2, sleep apnea. Once again, if we bring back ourselves to that equation, way up here, low CO2 levels and sleep apnea are two peas in a pod. Now, if you have bad mitochondria too, which you do if you have sleep apnea, that's going to continue to worsen that pattern. If you have healthy mitochondria, you're producing lots of energy and some metabolic byproducts like CO2, less sleep apnea. That's it. This is the missing metabolic link. Because yes, you can do breathing exercises all day long, which is great, but if you don't address this metabolic link, the mitochondria, it's going to be an uphill, slow battle. Now, the thing is, can we fix it? And despite what Bob the Builder Bob, may say, I'm a lot more optimistic than he is. Now, there's a lot of different ways to fix your mitochondria. Healthy food, good environment, exercise, stress level, like all these things will impact your mitochondria. But again, this episode is about my top game changers, so you can start to get an idea of what that could look like for yourself. Once again, this is your warning. This is the intense cat warning, which may be a running joke from now on out. But one of the things with my top game changers was maximizing natural melatonin. The reason that's important is because when melatonin gets inside of the mitochondria, it makes everything work better. It just makes everything work better. So the more I could improve that in a natural way, the better off I would be. Now you may be thinking, why not just take it in a pill? And at first I did. Just figure, hey, just supplement it. But I was not really getting the benefits that I wanted and many times just felt groggier. So when I shifted to more natural ways of making melatonin, that's what really helped move things in the right direction. So what that looked like for me was two main things. So one of the most important things was my bedroom environment at the time. It was pretty bad. So there was actually a bunch of lights across where through the window at night, if those lights were on, I could read a book from those street lights. That's going to hurt your melatonin. There was also a heater right on the side. Lived in Pennsylvania at the time. There's a heater there, and then also the I guess the HVAC unit was also like right on top, like right on the roof of where I was. So every time I used that heater, it would have a lot of noise, all that stuff, and EMFs and all that, so on and so forth. So did things to mitigate that. I mean, as simple as blackout curtains and just not using the heater at night. Sorry, you can just use it before you go to bed, turn it off. And that led to massive improvements in my sleep quality because I was helping maximize natural melatonin. Because if you're getting light, if you're getting noise interruptions, even electromagnetic fields, EMFs, those are all going to impact your body's melatonin levels at night. And along those lines, continuing with light, because I was studying a ton, doing a lot of research, and being on screens a lot. So I had to really make efforts to minimize the artificial light exposure I had at night, whether it was eliminating light or blocking out blue light. Those are really, really critical for me. And then also during the daytime, because when you're locked inside of a cubicle all day, you need to get time outside where you're getting natural light to help with your melatonin production at night. Now, the next game changer was something along the lines of nutrition. Again, this may not be appropriate for everyone because everyone's going to have different metabolic flexibility. Again, this is what I said earlier. There are going to be benefits of being younger. Now, if you're older, don't lose hope. There's still a lot to be done. Okay, it's just a different approach. But for me, was creating this free radical burst. What the heck does that mean? So, a free radical burst is when you put fuel into the mitochondria and it will make a certain amount of free radicals. Now, free radicals are usually viewed as bad. However, that's not always the case. Sometimes they're good because when you have bad mitochondria and they produce more free radicals, that will actually tell your cells to get rid of those mitochondria, break them down, and use the parts to make new, healthier mitochondria. So, how I accomplished that was with carbohydrate intake and timing that correctly and doing it in a way that was also good for blood sugar levels in just a post workout window. So, I had this like half keto, like in the morning, and then carbs later in the afternoon, especially after working out. If I didn't work out, no carbs, etc. But nonetheless, this led to creating oxidative stress, those free radicals in the mitochondria, which would then, if you zoom in down here, would ultimately improve the function because we're weeding out the bad mitochondria. So again, that worked for me, may not work for you, but that's the general idea. Now, another huge thing for me was stress reduction because being in research, very stressful, at least it was at the time. And so there's two big things that I did. Number one, mindfulness meditation. That was really great, really critical for me. And many times doing it in an ice bath, because I said earlier, was there a eureka moment in a bath? Yes, there was. Now, doing ice baths and all that, not recommended for mostly everybody, but as a way to calm down your sympathetic nervous system and turn on your parasympathetics, which is turning on your restful nervous system, that calms you down. Very helpful once you get used to it, and then combining those two together really brings down cortisol levels. We'll talk about why that's important in a moment. But also, counterintuitively, was also working out less. Because at the time, I was trying to be super healthy and working out basically every single day. Eventually, I cut that back to just 2 or 3 good workouts per week and doing less intense physical activity like walks, yoga, etc. That really helped me to lower my cortisol. And the reason that's so critical is because I'll keep it really simple with this graph. Cortisol will basically lead to mitochondria killing themselves off. That's not what we want. That's not good. So you lower your cortisol levels to a good natural state, then that will be less of an issue. And once again, I want to reiterate, like, even though these were my top game changers, there was a lot of things along the way because I had to try out a lot of stuff, but these I mentioned made the biggest difference for me. And of course, continuing with the breathing exercises, because that's the breathing exercise I started with, but of course, it progressed with time to make it more challenging so that I can continue to make those strides and continue to progress and get my breathing to a point where it is now, of where breathing is easy at night. The great thing about reprogramming your breathing is that you do not need to do it after a certain time. Your body just knows it, or it relearns it in a way, just like riding a bike. So fast forward to today, again, just don't have to keep doing a lot of stuff. Obviously, I do things to stay healthy and all of that. And that's why I want to go over two things that may be the most important for you. Option number one is to get more specific into this one aspect here, and I'll explain that in a moment. Option two, be able to get there a little bit faster, have a more progressive plan ahead of you. So with option one is our freebie, my journey where I give more insights to what I've mentioned, but also a few other things that were incredibly helpful for me. Again, your mileage may vary. Even though we have a common problem, there are going to be differences, and I appreciate that. Doesn't mean you won't get any benefit from trying out some of the things that I've mentioned here, but just to keep that in mind. So have a recap, extra tips, and also some of the top myths busted and all that laid out for you. Now, the second thing is going to help you create more of a plan around what you need to be doing for your sleep. And that's what the Sleep Apnea Reset Protocol Workshop is all about. It's about meeting you where you're at, about being able to know what level of function you are so you can create a plan so that you can make those improvements, just like a workout plan, if you will, really meet you where you're at, and then continue to make steady incremental progress and not have to try things that may be beyond your certain level, but also really just make smooth, steady, incremental progress. So how this works is you'll watch this workshop or video course, if you want to think about it like that, and then it'll walk you through a series of tests to be able to see, hey, where are you at with your breathing and everything else, and then be able to create a good breathing protocol for yourself. So super awesome in that sense there. And another great thing is we include a copy as a bonus of the sleep apnea solution, where it gives you a nice comprehensive resource of all the different ways to start addressing your missing metabolic links so that you're able to have long lasting progress. So that is all there for you, where you can be able to check that out. Now, how do you get either of these? Pretty simple. For the freebie, if you go to the description, there will be a link there. Now, how you find the description, which is shocking to me, it's not obvious. So you're going to click on this title, and then it's going to pop up over here. Here's the description, and then you're going to click on this blue link. Really easy to find. Probably easier if you're not on night mode like I was when I took this. That's a great looking face there. Now to get the sleep apnea reset protocol, now to get that, you click the link on the screen. I think maybe that was earlier. I'm not sure. I placed it in the video after I make the video. So if it was earlier, just rewind, go get that. Even easier is that you can easily just find it just below the comments, I guess on mobile, or it's just underneath the description box if you're on desktop. So pretty easy to find. Click there and you will be able to learn more about it and get it there. Now, if you're in a position where you don't have the ability to click something right now, I also made super easy links for you. So if you want the sleep apnea journey guide, go to ochnow.com/journey. That will take you right to it. If you want the sleep apnea reset protocol, that's ochnow.com/reset. It'll take you right there. So I'll put those on screen. And if you're someone who's watching this on Roku, which I'm still not sure what that is, and I'm not going to look it up because some surprises are just best left to live with. Nonetheless, I think the understanding you're watching this on TV of some sorts. So I have some QR codes that I'll show you here. Pretty simple. All you got to do is get your phone, access the camera, and you're going to point it at these QR codes. Now you're not going to take a picture of them. You're just going to point it at it, because then a link pops up and then you will press that yellow link. Pretty simple. So for either of these, I'll put them up on screen. Let me get a good zoom here. There you go. So if you want the sleep apnea journey, go to ochnow.com/journey or scan the QR code on the left. And if you want the sleep apnea reset protocol, you can scan the QR code on the right. Let me make sure those are visible. Maybe zoom in a little bit. There you go. And of course, for the sleep apnea reset protocol, you can go to ochnow.com/reset. Either way, you're a winner. You always are. All right, so thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you on the next page.